After a very inspiring talk by Marie-Louise Beck, we come down to more pragmatic technical issues, but yeah, it's also part of the reality. I would like to make a few points about the association agreement, or generally about EU's policy towards Eastern neighborhood, Ukraine in particular. So if we talk, and the panel is called the responses of the West, of the EU and US to the crisis, to the current problems. So if we think from this perspective, of course, the association agreement is not a response to the current situation. It was an instrument which was designed a long time ago, and it's aimed at long-term transformation and Europeanization of Eastern Partnership countries. Moreover, if we look at the association agreement and the text, we see that it has very few tools, or no tools maybe, to tackle some short-term problems. If Russia closes markets for products from Ukraine and other countries, or if there is an economic crisis which we face in Ukraine now and also in other Eastern Partnership countries, there is no response in the association agreement to these problems. But I have to say that the EU has managed to respond with other instruments. So with the case of Ukraine, the EU has offered a big financial package. It's not assistance, it's mostly loans, but still it's a help in the current economic situation. Also, the EU opened unilaterally its market for Ukrainian products already in April, which was before the association agreement was signed and ratified. And during this period, since April till October this year, Ukraine's export to the EU increased by 25%, so it works, this kind of market opening. Also, the EU lifted embargo for selling non-lethal military equipment to Ukraine. The embargo was put in place after Euromaidan. It was aimed at precluding Yanukovych associates using arms against the protesters. The EU was very slow to lift the embargo, but anyway it did at some point. So we see that the EU tries to react somehow to sort of short-term challenges with some instruments outside of the association agreement. If we talk about the association agreement as such, I think that what it has done so far, it has helped to cement the sense of direction in Ukraine. Because Ukraine used to have a multi-vector foreign policy, and it was never sustainable. Whoever was the president, he could change the course of direction. Now I think the direction towards European integration is inevitable. We see that overwhelming support for European integration in the society. Public opinion polls show this. So I think this. So there is some sense of direction in Ukraine now, which was not the case before. It's due to the agreement, but also due to Russian aggression. So these are several factors which have contributed. If we talk about the association agreement as such, there have been a number of impact assessment studies which show that in the long-term perspective it's a very positive instrument. It will increase GDP, it will increase working places, it will have many benefits for the economy of Ukraine and other Eastern Partnership countries. Actually, these countries have to transpose more than 80% of acquis communautaire into national legislation, and this means basically Europeanization of the system of governance and political system at different levels in the long-term perspective. But the problem is whether the agreement will be implemented, and here I think we should really look on the side of the recipient countries, and there we will see that there are a lot of actors who will block the reforms, who will resist implementation, and there are some actors who are reform-minded who will want to promote these reforms. And the agreement as such also doesn't give a response to how we help to support those actors who want to promote reforms, and how do we limit the space for maneuver for those actors who do not want to promote reforms. The agreement is not the response to this, although I think the agreement will help to mobilize reform-minded actors because it's a legally binding instrument. There are dispute settlement mechanisms, so civil society, business associations, if they see that the government is not implementing the reforms, they can appeal to this agreement and they can use the instruments to press the government to implement them. But I think for the agreement to be implemented successfully, the EU really has to work with actors on the ground. And this is actually what Russia is doing. Russia is not acting through action plans or bureaucratic instruments. Russia is looking what kind of actors are on the ground, which actors we can blackmail, which actors we can give some money, and so on. And this works. And the EU doesn't have the strategy. And I think it's very important for the EU really to look on the ground and to identify reform-minded actors and actors who block reforms in very specific reform areas. In different reforms areas, those will be different actors. And I think this kind of mapping has never been done. It should be done on a constant basis by the European Union. I think it's a costly and resource-demanding exercise, but it has to be done, and the EU in this way will help to implement the agreement. Otherwise, I think it will be very difficult to implement it. There will be a lot of resistance. I will give one example. There was a decision taken in Ukraine that Anti-Corruption Bureau will be created. It's going to be a body which is going to deal with high-level political corruption. The idea is basically to bring to justice several high-level important cases to show to the society that the system works, and this is supposed to eliminate corruption also on lower levels. What civil society organizations in Ukraine managed to do, they managed to demand that the EU includes into its financial package conditionality, that unless this bureau is created, there will be no money. So this is one of the successful examples how the EU can use its leverages actually to help to promote certain reforms. So yeah, I think I will stop here. I think this was my major point. Maybe a few points just to mention shortly about the postponement of DCFTA. From my perspective, it was not postponed. Okay, Russia demanded it. Officially, it was postponed, but EU opened its market for Ukraine. And next day after the ratification of the agreement in September, the Parliament adopted the action plan on implementation of the association agreement. And this action plan includes all the acquis which has to do with DCFTA. So Ukrainian government, it's also a part of the coalition agreement. It's also partially a part of the action plan of the government, which was adopted recently. So basically, officially, there is a commitment on the side of Ukraine to implement the DCFTA part of the agreement as well. So I think what Russia managed to achieve is kind of symbolic defeat, because Russia showed that it has a say, it can veto Ukraine-EU relationship, but I think in practice I don't see what Russia has achieved. One more point to add, because we're talking about Russian leverage here. Once the association agreement is implemented successfully, I think the system will be at place which will also diminish Russian leverage. Because if we look, Russian leverage works through non-transparent contacts or networks. Russian leverage works because there is no legislation on state financing for political parties, and we saw what's happening in Moldova before the elections. Russian leverage works because there is no legislation on transparency of media ownership and other many things. And in fact, the association agreement is supposed to tackle these problems as well. And once the system, which is transparent, accountable, is at place, also Russian leverage will diminish. But the problem is, of course, that Russia works in the short-term perspective. It works now, every day, and these benefits, the change of the system will come later on. So it's a big dilemma how to respond to the Russian meddling into domestic developments in these countries in the short-term perspective. Thank you.